Hey, welcome to the Resolve Podcast, episode number 41. I'm Carly Tizano, a New Year's resolution coach obsessed with all things goal setting, personal development, coaching, and of course, resolutions. One of my biggest goals is to help you reach yours. I'm here to provide the tools, support, and inspiration you need to reach your goals this year and every year, and to feel supported every day along the way. Today, we are going to be diving into a topic that apparently is another that has not been touched on with great frequency or consistency by anyone else out there in the world, or at least that has been brought to my notice. I did do some cursory research after knowing that this is a topic that I wanted to talk about and coming up with kind of the points that I wanted to go over in this episode today. I just did a quick Google search to see what other blog posts or articles might be out there on the topic to see if I kind of was in line with the general consensus of whether people would agree with these statements, to see if there's anything that I might have forgotten that I wanted to touch on in this episode. But I could not find any articles, at least on the first couple of pages of Google that I clicked through, that were even remotely related or centered on this topic that we're going to be talking about. And that is when to go after your goals. So all of the things that I saw on Google, and of course there's many other sources of information, but Google is one that we all reliably turn to, and pretty much all of them talk about what to do when you want to go after a goal, how to do it, even getting into why you should do it, which of course both of those things are topics that we've talked about here on the podcast, and we will certainly, I'm sure, talk about them again. But I wanted to talk today about when to go after your goals, because there are a lot of things that we want in life that we know we want to achieve or do, aspects of the people that we want to become. There are things that we know we want to achieve 5 or 10 years down the line. Eventually we all hope to retire, right? Probably enjoy our grandchildren. And before that, if you don't have children, then that's probably something that you have out there in the timeline of your life. And if you don't have a partner to make that happen, then that's something that you may be a goal that's closer to you in the timeline. And so there's things that we know we want to achieve or do. Maybe you want to go back to school or start a business, but what is the difference between knowing that those are things that you want to do and that there's something, sometime there you're going to exist at some point out there in the future, and determining, yes, now is the time I want to go after it, or this coming year is going to be the year that I set the resolutions around that? What is the difference? What do you need to consider? What are the factors that come into play? And how do you know when you should go after a goal, whether it's now or 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line? So that's what I wanted to look at today. We're going to be looking at 5 different times when you may want to consider going after your goals. All of these may come into play when you make a certain decision, or it may just be that one opens things up and you decide, yes, this is the time to go after that thing that I want. It is interesting to consider when this factor comes into play. Generally, it's going to come after knowing your what and your why, because if you don't know what you want to go after and why you want to go after it, then knowing when it's going to happen is of a much lower consequence and probably not even on your radar. But once you know those things, what you want and why you want it, then comes the time to determine when exactly that's going to happen. And it's okay if for some of these things, that's at some point in my future. At some point, I'm going to get married and have kids and start a business and write a book and retire and have grandchildren and all of that. But how do you determine when that time is? And how do you know when to start going after maybe those little things that are going to make those grander things possible, to get a new job or to go back to school or to read more? Whether you're facing big decisions or little decisions, we can use these 5 ideas, these 5 whens, to determine when is the right time to go after our goals. So the first is when you have the capacity to go after your goals, because let's be honest, we live busy lives in a busy world. There's never going to be a shortage of things that we can go after, or people we can meet, or TV shows we can watch, content we can consume. There's never going to be any shortage of that. And there are seasons in our life when we don't have room to fit too many extra things in, whether that be because you're already in school, or maybe because you have just started a family, or you have a lot of kids. There can be any number of reasons why you may not have the capacity in a certain season, whether that be a day, week, month, or year, or longer term, to take on anything else. And that's totally okay. There are times when going to the gym, the frequency with which you would like to, that's just not a feasible goal. Or reading 100 books in a year, that's just not something you have the capacity to do. And it's helpful and beneficial to acknowledge that to yourself, because then you don't have that kind of continuing nagging, at least in your own brain, saying, this is something you should do, why aren't you doing it? If you can recognize and acknowledge, I don't have the capacity for this right now, which is a totally acceptable reason. It's not an excuse, unless, of course, you determine that it is for you, that you're using it as an excuse to get out of doing something you don't want to do, or that you do want to do and that's important to you, which is a caveat and a discussion for another day. But if you do not have the capacity you determine to add something onto your plate or to go after a goal, then don't. That's a pretty simple benchmark. But if you do, if you're finding you're spending more time watching TV than you want to, or more time scrolling Instagram than you want to, or you have free time that you don't know what to do with, or if you find your brain just kind of wandering, it doesn't have projects to focus on, if it doesn't have things that it's working towards or figuring out, avenues where you're learning something new, then those are all keys or indicators to recognize maybe you do have the capacity for adding something else into your life. And so that is the time when you can consider, okay, what is that next thing? What do I want to do? What do I want to add or incorporate? And so that's a great time to turn to your list of whether smaller goals or bigger lifelong aims that you want to recognize to determine, okay, what aspect or part or entire thing can I integrate into my life because I have the capacity to do so? Okay, the second win to consider, the second win that comes into play is when you're tired of being where you are in life. We've all been there, I'm sure, where sometimes life just gets a little bit stagnant, the routine gets a little bit too familiar, and you realize this exact spot is not where I hope to be forever. And so that is a motivator to you to recognize, I actually want to be over there or want to be moving in this direction. And so you use that as the springboard or the spark of recognition that indicates to you, I'm not going to stay where I am anymore. I don't want to be here for the foreseeable future. I'm ready to start making some changes. So that is a great kind of kick in the pants that sometimes we need to recognize, I don't want to be in this place anymore. I don't want to be the person who leaves work and goes home and lays on the couch and watches TV. I want to be the person who leaves work and goes to the gym, or goes home and makes a healthy meal, or goes home and reads a book, or goes and volunteers somewhere, or goes on an adventure. I don't know, whatever it may be for you. Recognizing that you don't want your life to continue on the trajectory that it is because it's not going in the way you want to go, then that is the perfect time to make a change and to start implementing the what and the why that you already know, and using that as a trigger to recognize this is the win. This is the time to do whatever you want to do. And that leads us into our third win, which is when you want to. There are just some times when you're going to want to make a change, when you want to start working towards a goal. A lot of times that's exactly what happens on January 1st when we have a new year. You want to make a change. You want to start working towards the what's for the whys that you already have in place, that you already know and already are aware of. And if you don't know your what's or your whys, then I would encourage you to go back to episode 9 where we really talked about determining what those things are, determining what you want, and a little bit of why you want them, and lots of other episodes. We touched on that as well. And lots of our guests talk about the importance of knowing your why. But recognizing that this is the time I want to do that, that is a very powerful motivator. We've talked before about motivation is great, but we don't always have that. We want to capitalize on it when we do. We're going to use that probably to get started going after something that we want to when we want to. But recognizing that wanting to do this is then going to allow us to more easily shift into other energies such as commitment or willingness, those backup generator emotions that are going to enable us to continue to pursue our goals. That's so powerful, as opposed to just feeling like this is something I should do now, or what other people are doing now, or I guess I'll just do this now. I'll set the goal, and not feeling like you really want to is going to be much harder to then generate those other emotions that are going to help you carry it out and take your goals and resolutions to the point where they are actually achieved in your life. The next one is closely related to wanting to, but it is, at least for me, a very different feeling. You want to go after your goals or resolutions when it feels right. The one that comes to mind most often for me, and that I know I've talked about on the podcast before, is writing a book. I always known that I wanted to write a book, that it was going to be something that would play some part in my future. And I hadn't spent too much time thinking about it or worrying about it, because I just figured there would be a time in the future when I would have an idea and I would want to write a book. But I was also willing to, in the coming years, I knew if I didn't have an idea, then I wanted to put concerted effort and time into coming up with an idea and beginning to go down that path of writing a book. But then in early 2020, I had an idea of what I wanted to write about, and I felt compelled. I wanted to write about it. I had the capacity to do it, especially as the pandemic kind of came about and began to emerge. And it felt right because I had the idea, everything was kind of falling into place. And so I just rode that wave, and now my book will be coming out later this year, which, don't worry, you will be hearing much more about in the coming weeks. But it's so interesting to observe that at work in the world, that when things feel right, that's another time and opportunity that we want to take full advantage of. We don't want to ignore that and just kind of continue coasting on down the road. We want to capitalize upon that opportunity of, yes, this feels like the right thing. I have the idea, and often it'll be combined with that wanting to, or the desire. But even if it's not, if you're in that space when it feels right to start going after something, then I encourage you to, by all means, do it. Take advantage of that. And there are some people I know who don't tap into that part of themselves that much to recognize when something feels right. That kind of sounds like a foreign idea. They have no idea what that would even look like. But I want to encourage you that there are things in your life that I'm sure do feel right or do feel like they fit, or to bring my word of the year into it, that they feel aligned for you. And so I encourage you to recognize what they already are in your life, the decisions that you've intentionally made, the goals you've intentionally achieved or worked on, or that you are currently doing so, those ones that feel right and that feel like they fit into your life. Recognize that feeling, kind of generate it for yourself, identify what that feeling feels like in your body, and then you're going to be much more likely to recognize and identify it when it comes up as a result of whatever it may be in the world, when that feeling aligns with something that you intentionally want to achieve. Okay, the final time of when you want to go after your goal that we're going to touch on today is when the opportunity presents itself. This one, while it may happen when you want to and it feels right and the door may open and you have the opportunity to go after it, this would be particularly true if you were feeling like you wanted to volunteer and then you found a great organization that just felt right, you wanted to be a part of it, and then the opportunity presented itself that they were looking for new volunteers, or you met someone who already volunteered there, or you wanted to go to school and you found a school that felt like it was going to be the right fit, and then you applied and got accepted and that opportunity presented itself, or you got a scholarship. Those things, there are times when it feels right and you want to go after something and the opportunity presents itself, kind of boom. And that's even better if you're tired of being where you are and you have the capacity to take on this new change. So maybe all of these factors have come together for you, but there are times when the opportunity presents itself and it does not necessarily feel like all of those things are going to come together. One that comes to mind for me where the opportunity presented itself and I didn't feel at first like the other components were kind of at play was back towards the end of 2019 when I was thinking about becoming a certified life coach, and I knew I wanted to do it eventually. It was part of that 5 or 10 year plan. I figured eventually I'll do it. And I talked to people about it. I was doing some coaching already and I knew I wanted to become certified by the life coach school at some point. It just at that point did not feel right. But then I got an email about applications being open for the program, and it was going to be starting in a few months. And that was towards the end of 2019. And pretty quickly after I got the email, I recognized actually this opportunity that presented itself, I didn't think it was going to feel right because this time did not feel right until I got this email, until I recognized the opportunity. Now it does feel right. And since it is something that I wanted to do in the future, I can kind of capture that energy and bring it into the now. Since it's a path I'm going to trod anyway, I may as well take advantage of that now. I wasn't too sure about the capacity piece. Of course, then the pandemic happened and it ended up fitting into my life very nicely. And I could make the room in my capacity for it to fit in. But that was one where the opportunity presented itself. And because I was willing and open to seeing where that opportunity may lead, some of the other pieces kind of fell into line as well, which were, of course, then powered by my what and my why anyway. These are not exclusively the only times when we should consider going after our goals, but I think that there are 5 times or opportunities where you may experience one, you may experience all 5. They are kind of interrelated, but they're all distinct and they're all important. And each of them can trigger us to go in the direction of what we want, which I think is the most important thing. And it's not just about how we get there. That is where people tend to focus on. But for so many people who struggle to start, or being able and willing to recognize and identify, yes, I'm going to start now, is the biggest or hardest step anyway. And the rest of it is just going to come naturally along the way. And you can turn to other resources, as clearly there are plenty of them out there, to provide the tips and tools and support for every other step along the way. So I encourage you to resolve to take this list as you go forward and to identify when you are going to go after some of the goals that you have in mind. So it may be like we said, it may be I'm going to tackle this in the future. It's out there. One day it will be done. But if any of these wins apply to you, consider what then your next step is to get working. If it's the right time for you to go after something that you want and why you want it, then decide intentionally. What is my first step to get started on this goal that I want to go after? It may be the middle of the year, but there is absolutely no wrong time to start going after the things that we want and becoming the people that we want to be. I'm always reminded of that old proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. So you may have wished that you started going towards something at the beginning of the year or even before that. And sure, that may have been nice, but you're here right now. And if it's still something you want that's in alignment for you, then go after it wholeheartedly as long as it's the right time. As long as your when and your why and your what all line up right now, then I encourage you to go after your goals, your resolutions, and all the other things. Okay, today, what I'm reading Undistracted, Capture Your Purpose and Rediscover Your Joy by Bob Goff. I've read several or maybe all of Bob's books over the years. They're all good. They're all informative and encouraging. He's such a great storyteller. I will say most of them don't cover a lot of truly ingenious topics or really unique ideas, but they are all very encouraging. They have so many great stories. Bob is such an amazing person who's done a lot of incredible things, a lot of crazy things as well. But I always enjoy reading his books and hearing about what he's been up to since his last book came out and being re-inspired by whatever the topic of his book may be. This one is all about finding joy in your purpose, and that's something that we all can use, because whether or not we're working on a particular goal at a particular moment, we're all, I hope, living out our purpose in where we're at a given moment as we work on the things we are and become the people that we hope to be. It's a good book, an encouraging book. Don't expect to be blown out of the water by any of the ideas, but you might just laugh or enjoy the stories along the way. And then today I want to toast AirPods, because before I had AirPods, I used to go to the gym, and this was years ago, but I would tuck my phone into just like the waistband of my workout pants or leave it laying on a machine next to me, because I didn't have AirPods and my earbuds had to be connected to my phone. And of course, that was before I even had the nice workout pants with pockets, which are another, let's be real, ingenious invention. But even with AirPods, getting AirPods and using them at the gym, being able to leave my phone now in my pocket or on the machine or like even in a locker as I just walk around and do whatever I need to do is so nice. And I even know how nice they are at home when I'm walking around cleaning, not having to carry my phone around from room to room. But I have found myself in recent months, as I get ready or whatever I may be doing around the house, like simple cleaning or just picking up at the end of the day, I'll just tuck my phone against like my neck or my shoulder, kind of like I'm on the phone as I carry it around to do whatever I need to do. And it's so frustrating because you can never hear quite as well as you want to. Your phone, it's an uncomfortable position. You've kind of lost some of your functionality and mobility by doing that. And I've had to rediscover AirPods, although they were always part of, honestly, my daily life. But to identify there is a simple solution to this problem that I'm having of carrying my phone around, not being able to hear my podcast super well, or any other iteration of the neck pain that I may be feeling or experiencing. There is a simple solution here. I need to go find my AirPods and put them in and wear them around the house. I think that sometimes we're resistant to finding the easy solution, or we don't even recognize like there is an easy solution. Luckily for this problem, there was an easy solution. But then even knowing what it was, there are still times when I'm tempted to just be like, well, it's not that big of a deal. I'll just keep doing this. But then sometimes I drop my phone or I missed an important part of what I was listening to. So I want to toast AirPods and the reminder that they have been to me that when there is a simple solution to an annoying problem, to just take advantage of it. So maybe, hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and this toast to solve those problems that are recurrent in your life, those things you deal with every day, especially if they have a simple solution, and especially if you know what it is. Just take whatever action you need to do to eliminate those annoyances from your life and to capitalize on the benefits that you can gain when you are just enjoying the benefits of being able to hear what you're listening to, not dropping your phone, and everything else that goes along with that. So with that, thanks for tuning into the Resolve podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at Carly Desano. I would love to connect with you. Don't forget to rate and review. It really helps other people find the show. And subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't miss another great episode next week. For the show notes or additional support in reaching your goals, check out carlydesano.com. Until next time, here's to all that lies ahead.